The first check is to see if there's any run out at the flange washer. I've got the super bar set up on the edge of the flange, and I will turn it slowly by hand. We've got the face at 0, and I think you can see the needle. You got to stop and let it relax a little bit. It's a full revolution. There's less than 1,000th to run out, so that's good. We installed the blade, making sure that the flange washer was clean and there was no debris in there that could tilt the blade. With the super bar installed, we made a dot at the bottom of the major gullet, set the super bar on there, and zeroed out the gauge. Okay, we'll hold the plunge rod away from the blade, turn the blade so the dot is near the back, slide the super bar back there, and line up that dot again. You can see we got less than 1,000th of run out. Using a single spot on a blade, moving it from the front to back, eliminates any warp there might be in the blade. Gives us a true reading of how parallel the blade is to the miter slot. Even more accurate is using the master plate, also made by Master Gauge. This is a ground plate that's absolutely flat. It bolts on in place of the blade. You set the dial indicator on the plate, set the face to 0, and then push it across and see what kind of reading we get. See, we've got less than 1,000th shown on a plate, so our blade is parallel to the miter slot. To check the fence, we'll leave the super bar in the miter slot and bring the fence over and gently bump it over until it preloads this plunge rod, moves the needle about a half a round. Then we lock the fence down. Putting a little preload on here just ensures that the rod stays in contact with the fence all the way. I will set the dial to 0 and then we'll push it across. We want to be careful when pushing the dial indicator across. Just put one finger on the end and just slide it down the miter slot. Okay, we've got my fences out about 2.5 thousandths tailed out away from the blade, and that's exactly the way we want it. Next, we want to square the miter gauge to the miter slot. Now, a lot of people say to just take a framing square, put it against the blade, and square the miter gauge that way. But if the blade isn't dead on parallel to the miter slot, you're just building that error into the miter gauge, and it'll always cut that much crooked. It's a lot easier to take a 14-inch artist square, set it flush against the fence, and align it so the edge is even with the edge of the miter slot. It's a quick way of doing it. These artist squares are cheap and they're very accurate. A lot of people advocate using a piece of wood to check your miter gauge. You get a fairly wide piece of wood, make a cut, stand it up, and take the cutoff piece, flip it over, and stand it against the edge. There should be no gap standing in between them. The problem with this is both of the edges have to be exactly straight and exactly parallel to each other, or this test doesn't tell you anything.